Hey everyone, we are going to get started in just a little bit. So we got a couple more minutes. I apologize if it's a little bit loud behind me. I'm on location once again here at Arizona State University in Scottsdale, Arizona at ASU Sky Song, which is a pretty cool little campus, a lot of neat global ventures going on, a lot of community partnerships. So we're going to get started in just about like a minute and a half. One of the things that we are going to start doing a little differently is just in this first couple minutes before we hit like right at noon, just having a little conversation, seeing what people are reading, what are you listening to, is there anything on your podcast list that's like a must listen right now, kind of to get some informal inner pre-presentation sharing going on out there. So if you want to chime in on the questions section, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, as usual, we're going to start right at noon. I'm going to check my official time clock, so we've got about 40 more seconds to go. But as we're prepping for this, I just want to check in with everybody, give you just a couple of seconds before we get started of, hey, how are you doing? How's 2020 going? I see a couple of people are chiming in with what they're reading. Yes, Marie Forleo, Everything is Figure Outable. Amazing, amazing book. Awesome audio book too. Just make sure you leave yourself time to actually do the work. She has a lot of what she calls insight to action challenges, and they're pretty good. But I love that philosophy. So Christy, thanks for chiming in with that. That one's awesome. Everything is figure outable. How about Between the World and Me? I have not explored that yet. So Sarah, thanks for sharing that one in. That looks awesome. So you guys might want to check that one out as well. Okay, so we're gonna have a couple of those rolling in. I'll touch base with them back at the end of this session. So again, I apologize if there's background noise. I'm on location. I'm in an awesome lobby upstairs, but I think a lot of classes are just getting out. But let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. So this is the first of a 4-part series on fear. And when I put this together as kind of, hey, what do I want to explore next? This topic, this idea of fear, and particularly this idea of where we force versus where we allow ourselves to have flow, has kept coming up for me personally. It's something that I'm working through, but also in my conversations with a lot of you or my engagements on social media, it was coming up there. So today we're going to be tackling the idea of release to receive, which is really more of a practice than it is just a concept. And so we're going to get into that a little bit. Again, we are partnering with the League of Women in Government. Their address is on the screen right now, leagueofwomenIngovernment.org. They're an amazing organization geared primarily at women in local government, but for my audience members out there who are working in other industries, they have a lot of just really relevant resources and content that you might find interesting. So go ahead and check it out, no matter what industry you're in. Again, this is me. If you're joining me for the first time, I try to give you a little bit of my personal who am I, why am I talking to you about this, and then we'll jump right into the content. Nicole Lance, I'm the CEO of Lance Strategies. I'm a managing partner for Extraordinary Balance and one of the co-founders of Arizona Women Leading Government here in Arizona. So we're dedicated at equipping more women leaders to be successful in local government management. Now, this is my family. It's my husband, Sean, and my little one, Emerson. And then over on the right-hand side of your screen, that is my stepdaughter, Micah, who is 2 days away from deploying to the Middle East. So for all of you out there who serve, work with, or are related to or supportive of veterans in any way, or active duty military, thank you for what you're doing for the country. It's an incredible commitment. Okay, today, same format as the others, 30-minute quick hit, concept review, and then application. We'll get to Q&A at the end. So please send in some questions if you have them. I'd love to get to them at the end of the webinar. So why are we talking about fear? Why of all the things that we could explore was this particular 4-letter F word the one that we want to dive into? So the reason for me is really there's 3 tiers to this, because fear restrains us from getting what we want. It constrains us from growing. It keeps us small, and it derails us when we're making good progress, when we're moving towards our goals, right? Which is the intent of why we join sessions like this, to move forward, to advance, to grow. And fear really can keep us small. It can hold us back. And in fact, it can totally knock us off course. And that's why it's such a critical piece of the conversation. Release to receive. As a concept, this, sounds good. It's got some cool alliteration. What the heck does it actually mean? What am I actually talking about this? This visual for me is good, and whether it's lemons or it's other people's problems or it's excessive amounts of workload or bad habits that we've developed or all of these other things, what happens is a lot of times we hold on tightly to all of these things that we think we need to carry, around with us. And what happens is that means we have no room to take on anything else. So it becomes a capacity issue. So if you think of it as, I only have so many days in my week, I only have so many hours in the day, that's us holding on to a lot of stuff that is potentially holding us back. So I noticed one of you said you're having trouble hearing. Please double check your speakers. I don't see anybody else having that same issue. So sorry about that, Stephanie. Okay, so keep going. So this idea that the fear, when we're holding on to fear, especially, there's no room to receive good things, positive things that might also be coming down the pipeline for us. Where do we start? When we start working with this, how do we even begin to kind of move through this once we start to realize what's going on? First, you better recognize, you've got to understand what's going on, because what happens with fear is we do one of two things, and we do them really, really well. We mask it, or we avoid it altogether. So we say, maybe masking looks like the word just. Well, I'm not afraid, I'm just stressed out. I'm just too busy. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with fear. It's not that I don't want to move forward. It's not that I don't want to pursue that goal. I'm just too busy. I don't have room for it on my plate. This is one of my favorite ones, and I'm famous for using this as an excuse when really what's going on is I'm actually a little bit of afraid or dealing with some fear, is I'm just trying to get my ducks in a row. I can plan and take action for an infinite amount of time, and at some point I need to say, you know what, those ducks are lined up good enough, it's time to move forward. We say things like, well, I'm just a perfectionist. Okay, I need to get the resume just right before I put it in. I'm not sure I'm really ready for that position. I'm not sure that I, want to move houses because really the perfect home hasn't come up yet. Whatever these are, whatever you're dealing with, when you start to feel that block, check and see, are you actually masking this as something else? Because what happens is we use these excuses and it goes on and on and on. And a lot of times that's that restraining or that constraining factor going on. Now, what can derail us a lot of times is the practice of avoiding. It's the behavior that we employ when we're avoiding it. We say things like, well, I would do that, but I just need to catch up on this first. I really need to clear out my inbox. I was going to go to that training, or I was going to go to employee yoga over lunch hour, but I really got to do this. I need to get a head start on this project. If all of a sudden picking up dog poop in the backyard looks more appealing than working towards the thing that you said you want, there's a good chance that this is what's going on for you. That goal really isn't important. You know what? I didn't really want to do that anyway. I didn't really want that seat on that committee. I didn't really want to speak on that panel at that conference. When in actuality, you did. And the problem was there was fear that was blocking the way from you putting in that application, or you making the phone call to the selection committee to say, hey, throw my hat in the ring for this one. We'll say things like, I'll tackle it later. And instead of dealing with whatever is preventing us from moving on, we just push it, kick the can down a little bit further down the road. I must have indigestion. That's what this feeling is in my body. It's something I ate. It's not something that my intuition is telling me I should deal with. Or I love this one. I need to reorganize my closets. That Marie Kondo really knows what she's talking about. Again, if all of a sudden these other things start to filter in that aren't really what you wanted to go for, or what you said you wanted to go for, consider whether or not it's fear that's actually lying behind it, and you're just trying to avoid the fear or the discomfort of moving forward for your goal. Okay, so part of recognizing, understand that this means Latin roots coming from again and learn. Again and learn. So it's something you already know. It's already inside you. You don't need someone else to tell you. You just need to be willing to learn it and acknowledge it. So learning it again, it's something you already have this information for. One of the ways to do this, one of the ways to recognize when fear is in play is if you are feeling friction or frustration somewhere. Friction or frustration. Something rubs you the wrong way. You're kind of like, ugh, that doesn't feel good. What's going on? What's behind this? Or this insane amount of frustration. You're not making the progress you want to make. Every time you try and tackle it, it feels like there's kind of this mental block. Consider whether or not fear is actually behind that. And it's a really courageous question to ask yourself, because not everybody wants to know that answer, right? It may not be something positive that you were hoping to find. It might in fact be something that you really need to do differently and say, hey, if this is really where I want to head, this is the success I want, this is the outcome I'm working towards, man, maybe I'm holding myself back. But look for areas where there's friction or frustration for you, and then kind of question in those areas, is it an outside factor? Is it an inside factor? And if it's an inside factor, is it possibly my own fear that I need to release and let go? The other way to kind of figure out and recognize where fear is coming into play. If you've ever had chocolate milk or Nestle Quick or even like hot chocolate, and you put the liquid in the cup and then you put the powder in and you're like stirring, and you're so excited. Man, this is going to be like the best drink ever. I'm really, looking forward to it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you take the spoon out and you realize that, oh, it's not all incorporated. What is all this stuff sifting to the top? This is my analogy for when we are so busy, when we are in continual perpetual motion, the plates are full, the days are full, the hours are packed. It's from before I get out of bed until after I go to bed at night that my brain is on. We are not leaving space for stuff to filter up that we can then deal with. And so if you can get a minute, if you can get 5 minutes, if you can get 10 minutes, journal if you want to, take a walk, meditate, whatever works for you, to take the spoon out of the cup of your life and let it sit and see what comes up. Because often until we take that pause, we don't even have the awareness of what's going on that might be causing that friction or frustration, or that feeling that we keep blaming on heartburn or indigestion. Maybe something deeper is going on. So take that time to take the spoon out of the cup and kind of stop stirring your daily life long enough for other stuff to pop up. And that's how you're going to be able to really recognize what's going in. Now, if I just said that and you were like, Nicole, I don't have time for that. Do it the next time you're in the bathroom. I promise you, you are a captive audience, at least for a couple of minutes. If you're exceptionally efficient, it might be only 90 seconds, but take that 90 seconds, because what happens is we mask the inability. I have no ability to have time to do this. That masquerades as busyness. When in actuality, we might be afraid of what we're finding out about ourselves. We might be afraid of what we're learning. So take some time, stop stirring your cup, see what starts to filter up a little bit. Okay, let's talk about moving through fear. So instead of just kind of recognizing it, giving a little bit of time to kind of understand what's going on, how do we actually take that and then take action to move through it instead? If you, depending on where you're at, what your background is, if you remember G.I. Joe, and G.I. Joe, the motto was knowing is half the battle. Literally half of the battle of how you navigate and move through fear is dependent on recognizing it. So once you've done that work of how can I recognize it, look for those areas of friction or frustration, stop stirring the cup long enough to kind of figure out what's going on. That's going to help you actually move through it. Because once you recognize what the feelings actually are, you're able to develop strategies specifically to target them. Acknowledge it and embrace it, but don't succumb to it. So instead of avoiding fear, instead of masking it as busyness or something else, the endless to-do list of things, it's okay to acknowledge it. And this is one of the first roadblocks. I don't like acknowledging when I am fearful. because it makes me feel weak, or it makes me feel like someone else might perceive me as weak. It's why we're hesitant to ask for help a lot of time. It's this Wonder Woman complex of, I should be able to do that. And we should all over ourselves right into inactivity and not being able to do anything. So it's okay to acknowledge it. I actually encourage you to embrace it as a learning tool, because fear can be very instructive, but don't succumb to it. So just because we can acknowledge that we are fearful, or just because we say, hey, I'm uncomfortable here, or I'm afraid that, fill in the blank, doesn't mean that we are enslaved to it forever. Doesn't mean that that's where we have to stay, or that that's what we need to be held captive by. So acknowledge and embrace it. Use it as a learning tool. Don't feel like you have to succumb to it. It doesn't define you. It's something that gives you the opportunity to define yourself instead. Okay, so specific to the practicing of releasing to receive, how do we specifically work to receive and actually release things, kind of get all of those things out of our hands so that we have room to take on the next good thing? I'm going to give you 4 specific strategies here. Number 1, when we look at how you do the work of releasing fear, consider the practice of catch and release. Now, I've mentioned this before in response, I think, to a attendee, an audience member question about kind of halting the negative thought train. Practice catch and release with your fear. And this goes a little bit to that acknowledging it and embracing it, but not succumbing to it. When you realize there's fear present, or when you feel afraid, fear starts to crop up for you, notice it and think of it as catch and release fishing. So if you're not fisher men and women, that's fine. But this idea that we kind of catch hold of the thought, like, hey, ooh, I'm afraid, or ooh, I'm fearful, or I've noticed that I have fear around this, and then intentionally say, okay, I release that. So actually that conscious acknowledgement, and then the conscious letting go of that fear. So catch and release. And that's a good, easy kind of mantra to keep in mind, especially if you're going through something that is sort of an ongoing process of fear, where maybe it comes up every day, like, ooh, new position. Holy cow, am I meeting their expectations? Oh, am I going to be able to handle this workload? Oh my gosh, we're moving. What are we going to do with this? We have, a change in the kids' school schedules. How are we going to navigate that? And anytime that fear comes up, to acknowledge it and say, okay, is there any more work to be done here? Probably not at that point. Then I'm going to consciously release this and choose not to let it take up brain space in my head, not rent more space in my head. So that is one strategy. Second strategy, ritualize it and mourn if you need to. One of the biggest ways that fear constrains us is it keeps us in an old mode of thinking. So this might show up as, I thought it was going to look like this. I thought this position, this job, my life, this time in my life, this trip, this experience, whatever it is, might look a certain way, and it doesn't feel that way. And so the fear is, or might be, I screwed up. I made the wrong decision. It will never get better. This is as good as it's ever going to get. I have no better alternatives. And so what happens, especially if we're not ready to do the work on what might come next, is we actually need to take a minute and mourn what hasn't happened. So I actually did this with a coaching client who took a position, super excited about it, thought it was going to be a great career move, and it turned out to be a really toxic environment for her. And one of the homework assignments I gave her was to actually create a funeral for her expectations of what she thought she was going to get, because she was so blocked by dealing with what was going on that she wasn't open to what could be, or what those other possibilities might be that were coming down the line. It was literally clouding her vision. So her hands were too full of what was such a mess in the current form that she wasn't even open to what could be. And so consider whether or not you need a little ritual and to mourn whatever you thought it was. And sometimes what that can do is it can move us through the fear of letting go of something. And then once we do that, then our hands are going to be open for the next thing that's coming in. All right, next strategy. I love this one. I am currently practicing this one every day. What's on the other side of the coin? So if one side of the coin is this seemingly infinite list of ways that it could go wrong, how you could mess up, how you might embarrass yourself, how many poppy seeds you're going to forget to pick out of your teeth before you go into the meeting to present, how, whatever it is, that infinite list of fears, intentionally, for every time you have a fear-based thought, counter it with what could go right. And that's a question we frankly don't ask ourselves very often. How many ways could this go wrong? And I guarantee you could come up with a list pretty quick of boom, boom, boom. These are all the ways it could get messed up. Now, asking yourself what could go right is a really great way to start to move you out of that fear mentality and into that curious mentality, into the positive mentality, into the good expectation mentality of what's coming forward. What else could be coming forward. This is really powerful with kids. If you have kids that are anxious or worriers, this is a good practice for them too, to train them kind of into that behavior. I used to do this with a number of my directors that I supported when I was working in local government. And every time we would hear the laundry list of, potential negatives and things that could go wrong, every time we start to build the what could go right list, we found out, you know what, this is really worth working towards because these are actually a lot more likely than that. So intentionally making yourself look at that other side of the coin, what could go right. All right, explore other good. This one at first might feel yucky because it means we're acknowledging that maybe a situation isn't going to go the way that we wanted it to. And that's not really a fun realization. But once we move forward and we're ready to release, like, hey, I'm going to release the fear that this thing isn't going to work out. I'm going to release the fear that I'm never going to have something better. Then we get to do the fun stuff of exploring the other good. So not really just what might go right, but what else would be good for us? What else would be something awesome that we might want too? So that example, I had one client who's currently considering a move, and it would be a huge shift for their family and a lot of coordination. And all she's kind of focusing on is this, we're disrupting the kids' school schedules and how much work it's going to be and money and time and what if we don't like the new place? And so instead we sat down and did this exercise of, what other good is there in this? And so she started to look at, quality of her kids' education, diversity of the schools they're putting them into, storage space in the new house, more tile, less carpet, so it's easier to clean in her mind, all these other things. And so until we are willing to release whatever that fear thing is that's holding us like this, as soon as we go like this, there's room for something else good to come in. So you can also apply this if your fear is making a mistake, not getting a position that you go for, ruining a presentation, bombing a public presentation, whatever it is. What other good could come of that, even if that fear comes true? What other learning could occur? What coaching or mentoring relationships might come out of that? What are those other things that may also be good? Like maybe you find out, I hate presenting in public. Therefore, I am not going to go pursue that job. I'm going to go look for something that does this other set of activities, skills, practices that I'm more inclined to do. So that's leaning into some of these other areas of good. What else could we explore? Okay, so we are coming down to a little bit on the end. I want to look at some of the questions that have come in. Oh, we got a couple more book recommendations too. National Book Award winner, wonderful memoir. Appreciate that. Let me just flip through these to get to the questions. Okay. Nicole, I hear you about releasing fear. I am currently working on this. However, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't feel like I'm doing a great job releasing my fears. I feel like they're just kind of circling back and forth and coming back up and coming back up. For my fellow 2 a.m.ers, because this is something that I struggle with occasionally, certainly have struggled with in the past, a couple of reflections on that question. Number one, don't succumb to the false framework that you are just a worrier. Consider instead looking at that kind of 2 a.m. list as an opportunity to practice some of these skills. Obviously not the time of day at which you'd probably choose to practice intentionally, but a good opportunity nonetheless. What are some of the ways that you can put those skills into practice? So one, don't subscribe to the framework that you're an insomniac, but instead this is a good opportunity to practice and learn, and then you can resolve kind of that 2 a.m. issue. Second one, in crucial conversations, one of the 4 goals of dialogue, so intending to be conversational with somebody else, is to produce results. I like applying that goal for my own internal monologue. Sometimes it feels like a dialogue because I'm like, who is talking in here? How many of these other voices in my head are filtering in? But when I lose the goal of producing results, then I'm able to, when I recognize it, I'm able to step back and say, okay, does this continue to deserve my brain space, my energy? So that's doing a little bit of recognition work around what's going on there, and recommitting to, okay, if a goal of my internal mental energy work, my time, my thoughts, everything like that, if a goal of that is to produce results, so I'm thinking about this for a purpose, to resolve it, take action, figure out my next steps, maybe explore the good, see what else I want to do, but I'm in this loop, then I've lost that goal. So asking yourself, how can I produce results from this line of thinking, usually will disrupt it enough to get you either onto something else where you may have to ask the same question, or it will move you into a space of productivity and productive active thinking instead of just the worry loop. So that one's helpful as well. Catch and release is also a great practice for 2 o'clock in the morning, where you're just like, I am just being bombarded. One thought. As they come in, that's actually an old and very common meditative practice. Notice the thought and then allow it to continue moving on. If you're visual, some people like to consider that as a stream. Their thoughts are a stream moving on, and so they just see the water flowing. I like the actual visual of like fishing and like throwing my line out, and what I caught this thought, like, oof, I don't want that one for dinner. Like, let's keep that going. Let's go ahead and put that one back in the lake so it can swim away. So practicing that catch and release too. And then the next day, when you're looking back and maybe you get up and write down like what was on the 2 a.m. list, can give you a lot of insight, because what happens is a lot of us have that experience and then we don't do anything with it the next day. So it crops back up the next night. So it's like the cup. We wake up and we go, and we don't want to think about how crummy that was to be awake for an hour and a half at 2 o'clock in the morning, worrying, or being afraid or feeling that fear. And so we mask it, we avoid it, and we stir that cup. And so actually giving yourself a little bit of space and room to delve into that and stop stirring so you can see really what's filtering up. I notice patterns sometimes where if I have that in a couple of nights in a row and I start to write them down, and then a few days down the road, I look at the list and I'm like, oh, those same 3 things, that's almost done. That's almost done. It's going to be resolved next week, whatever it is. So again, most of that work, especially around the 2 in the morning list, is going to be around awareness. Okay, that was actually our only questions. Oh, no, we got another one. Okay, I have crazy stuff going on at work right now. I was a 2 a.m. person several times this week. Even getting up and writing down, even getting up and writing down everything wasn't enough to pull my mind out of the funk. Why is this so hard to read? Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble getting the full breadth of your question here. Wasn't enough to pull me out of my funk. I think I need an attitude adjustment. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the full text of your, oh yeah. Okay, here we are, sorry. All right. I was a 2 a.m. person several times this week. Even getting up, writing down didn't help, consumed with negative thoughts and fear. So this morning, I put on fun dance music and got out of my funk. It was the mind shift to pull stuff off all the time. So why am I acting differently? I just needed an attitude adjustment. So Chrissy, awesome submittal. Sorry, it was so hard for me to read that. And obviously ID 10T error here on my end. But yeah, maybe you just need to try something totally different. You know, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I'm just going to lay here and think harder. Maybe that's not going to bring you the results you want. Maybe you do need to get up out of bed and try and put on some funky music and dance, or try something different. So, okay, so awesome, deep question there at the end. Maybe one, but a pretty powerful one. We just had somebody else pop in. I'm in a new position and I've been trained in important tasks. As I complete this task, I find myself in doubt and lack self-confidence that I can complete this. Is it fear? So I find myself in doubt and lacking confidence that I can complete it. So new position, trained a new task, but now all of a sudden I'm like, ugh. It could be fear. It's the fear imposter syndrome is often what that's called. I'm not going to be able to continue to perform, which is generally the fear of failure. So dig into that a little bit and question the validity of that. So sometimes we have those concerns, but is it fear? I think so. In that case, you've got the training, you have the tools to do what it is. Can you actually complete it? Look back at your past experience and see where it has gone right. How many times have you succeeded in a similar situation? Maybe not this exact one, but in a different situation. The first time you moved, the first time you went to a new school, the first time you started a new job, meeting new coworkers. Look for those other times to validate your ability to be successful, and then really catch and release it. Yeah, you might have that fear, but it doesn't mean you have to stay there. It doesn't mean you have to live in it forever. Okay, just gonna do one quick switch through. Okay, nope, I think we're good. So, okay, if I did miss your question, shoot me an email. I'll make sure I respond to you. But for everybody else, thank you for being here today. Thank you for having the courage to explore this. Like I said, we've got 3 more explorations into fear and how it works for us. So the next one is resistance is futile, reframe quickly. And this is going to be a little bit about how we push back against fear, and then how we can actually reframe it and do some work to help us move quicker out of it, so we're not staying stuck in some of that fear. So again, I want to say thank you to the League of Women in Government. Thank you to all of you for doing what you do. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, this is the way to do it. And with that, I hope you have an amazing, amazing, fear-free rest of your day. Thank you so much.